And welcome once again. Thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us. First things first, please pay attention to the trigger warning down below. That will be scrolling all show. And I will tell you, we'll be talking about a lot of deep stuff as we have a guest tonight, Miss Deborah Louise.
Yes.
Yes, Ortiz.
She has is having technical difficulties at the moment.
No
So
worries.
she's gonna. Oh, she should be coming back in, but until then, we
Okay.
can continue.
Yeah. Hey, that happens. It's
And
the
Otis, I do want to tell you whatever we did today in StreamYard is working because it's showing up live on my page. So it
awesome.
should be showing up live on your page. So hopefully we figured
That's
out
great.
all our
Yeah, that
issues.
we have it going out to like five different destinations. Your Facebook, my personal Facebook, my YouTube channel, Night of the Living Dreads, the Dred the Stigma YouTube channel, as well as your YouTube channel. So I mean, there's no reason that you shouldn't be watching, because this is like I said, a very we're going to talk about some deep subjects. So again, please observe the warning scrolling across the bottom of your screen. It will be there the entire time. I want to take a quick moment before we get excuse me, before we get into and bring Deborah on to talk about the documentary Code 9, Officer Needs Assistance. I want to say, I guess along those lines of what we are talking about tonight, I got a very, very cool bracelet from this website right here, Tilvahala. I guess I'm saying that right. Project.com. I want to show you I don't know. There we go. You can probably kind of see it there. The cool bracelet I got. What they do, proceeds go to, I don't know if you guys can see it there, but it goes to taking and financial donations. They also hand deliver memorials to fallen military, law enforcement, as well as all other first responders. So a very worthwhile project. Excuse me. $15 is all I paid for this, and it's very well made. So I would highly suggest, if you do and you want to support a good project, which is kind of a decent little segue into what we're going to be discussing tonight. Let me check the chat room real quick. If you want to give us a brief introduction of our guest.
Yes, I will. So last episode we talked about the stigmas of mental health in pop culture, and we talked about movies and how it's portrayed and how sometimes, people don't always get it right. But one person that did get it right is my friend Deborah. She made this documentary, Code 9. Here is Code 9, Officer Needs Assistance. So we're gonna bring Deborah on.
Oh, we want to play the trailer first?
Or after we bring her on. Hey, Deb. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us, Deborah.
Again, thank you for doing this.
Do you want to be addressed as Deb or Deborah? What do you prefer?
My friends call me Deb, Debbie. So either.
We'll go with Deb because I think we're going to be friends after this.
I actually I got to work with Deb on a film called Macabre Mountain, which is streaming on Amazon right now. And we actually talked about this project, and that's how I came to know about it. There was obviously I have a background in law enforcement, and there was another actor who was there who also had background in law enforcement, and all three of us were talking, and we were talking about the mental illnesses that come along with that job, and Deb turned me on to her documentary. So when we decided to talk about mental health stigmas in the workplace, yours was the first thing I thought of, and I was like, we need to talk about this. So just a brief description of this is Code 9 tells the stories of first responders and their families who are left to deal with the effects of stress and trauma of the careers they choose. And Otis has the trailer, so we're going to play that for everyone so that they hopefully after this or whenever they watch this episode are able to go and watch the whole documentary.
Oh, they're going to be intrigued for sure. Check this out.
It's all part of the job. It becomes a way of life. We quickly realize that we can't think too much about it. And if it bothers us, we can't say anything. Not even to our brother or sister who is right there with us.
I knew in high school that I wanted to become a police officer.
If you'd ask my wife, she'd tell you I was that kind of person. I wanted to make a difference.
Stuff it down. Move on. We have to stay tough and see it through.
If I got shot in the leg, wouldn't you give me time to heal from that? It's an injury, it's a service-connected disability, but since it's PTSD, I've got sick leave I could use, I have vacation I could use, I'm not gonna get any of that and maybe see if I'm making some progress or something like that. If I were to walk by any one of those guys, military, law enforcement, whatever, if I seen him on the ground, I'd reach my hand out and I'd help him get up to his feet. And I just felt like not only did they not do that, it was almost like kicking me while I'm down.
We respond to many calls, some of which give us a front row seat to what will be the worst moments in people's lives.
I try to look at everything as not so much post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic growth. The things you've been through never go away. They don't just disappear. And there might be things that come up that make you think about them, but it's how you deal with them at the time.
I'll be damned if I let this happen to me. I'll be damned if I'm going to let this job take my life.
This is all part of the first responder culture. It changes you.
The hair stands up on my arm every time I watch that. That's how powerful this documentary is, ladies and gentlemen. It is definitely worth the watch. Lydia, I think you have everywhere where people can watch this. If you want to, do you have that handy? And then we can dive right into it.
Yes. So you can watch Code 9 Officer Needs Assistance on Amazon, Apple TV, Fandango, YouTube, and Google Play. And it's won several awards from the Orlando Film Festival in 2017. It won the Social Awareness Award, also won Best Documentary Feature at that same award. And then it's been nominated several, I couldn't even count all the times it was nominated for Best Documentary. And it even has a rating of 9.3 on IMDb, which, yes. I mean, Deb, you should be so proud of what you did. And it's hard.
It is hard. And Lydia, I just, when we had the opportunity to meet and you told me what you did, working in corrections, I just want to make this really clear You know, when I say first responders, I know we think about police, we think about firefighters, we think about EMTs. We have done, when I was a nonprofit organization, we did a ton of training, and we went to prisons all over the U.S. to work with correctional officers, because we don't want to forget about them. They, I just don't know how they do the job or how you did the job that you did. So first of all, thank you for your service. And second of all, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that I want to make sure that we're including corrections and our dispatchers when we speak about this subject matter.
We always,
Absolutely.
when I was working, we always joked that we were the redheaded stepchild of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because nobody likes corrections.
Yes.
Nobody likes corrections officers, because I could not tell you one single show, film, anything that depicts CEOs in a good light.
Yes.
Everything is us beating inmates, us doing this,
Yeah.
and yes, it does happen, just like police brutality. There is bad people in every single career. Unfortunately, police get shown a lot more. Law enforcement gets shown a lot more, which actually made it interesting, because I did read this one review of your film, and it said, this is a tough time in the U.S. for the police. Now, this film, you shot this in 2015. It came out in 2017, but I think it still resonates with the time of today. Says, as many folks have been protesting real and perceived police brutality in several widely publicized cases. Yet despite all of this, I strongly urge everyone to see Code 9, regardless of how you feel about these issues. It does a great job of humanizing the police, and it also helps you to understand the cases where officers react poorly towards the public, and why there's often a we versus they attitude.
Yes.
So, I think that helps speak to it too. We're not all bad guys.
No, and I think it's really important to point out that police are the least liked of first responders. Their job is incredibly difficult. There's laws, and they're the ones who are upholding the laws. And most of the reaction that I got from the public when we were doing screenings of the film was that they had no idea. They had no idea that that officer that just stopped you for speeding might have just come from a call where a child died in their arms.
Yes, exactly.
So, it's just really, it's a tough career. And, I just want to shed light on the good cops. And there's a ton of them out there. We tend to focus on all the bad, but yeah.
And then I can back up what you're saying. My uncle retired from Baltimore City police department. He was a K-9 cop. He retired at like 42 years old. I mean, he had been with them forever. And still continued in his, future jobs, at like 70 years old. He's a guard at a Marine base. But anyway, just to give the listeners a little, a heads up, can you, tell us what, if you like, what inspired you to make this documentary?
Sure. My husband is a retired New York State trooper and a former DEA agent.
Okay.
He was also worked undercover for several years. And through, like you just mentioned, he retired very early because he started early. At the age of 42, he was already retiring. I started to notice some changes in him right prior to retirement, which I attributed to he's retiring. That's a tough time just to
He's cranky, he ain't got nothing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. But after he retired, I could tell you that year after he retired, our lives quickly went to hell. My husband was suffering with complex PTSD. He was diagnosed with PTSD, and all that he had seen. And as a state trooper, while he was on the roads, he had seen literally hundreds and hundreds of fatalities.
Oh yeah.
Hundreds. So, some of them was just horrifying. And he stuffed it down. And when retirement came, he had nowhere to go anymore. And all the demons started to show their faces. And all the ghosts started to appear. And I didn't know what was happening. When we did find out that he was dealing with PTSD, I was so, one of the things I want to say is that the families suffer along with these officers, okay?
Absolutely.
It's not just the firefighters and the first responder themselves, their families, their wives, their husbands, their children. They suffer with them. And I was so inspired. You know what? It was actually, if I could say this, I was pissed. I was pissed because I could not believe that the departments were doing nothing to help our first responders dealing with their mental health. And the fact that they can be left to deal on, with life on their own, with no backup, with no counseling, with nothing. The documentary was a way of me saying, F you, I'm going to tell them your dirty little secret. And that's why I made the film. It was out of anger.
That's awesome.
Sorry, Otis.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was gonna say, like you mentioned, it affects the family. And like in my research, and it says males make up 87% of personnel with suicides, where the rate out of the 92%, and it said 59% of those were in relationships, and 66% of the officers that committed suicide had at least one child.
Yes.
So that is a large percentage.
Yeah.
Over half of these officers that are, giving into their demons, essentially are leaving, a wife or a husband, a child, children behind.
It's sad.
And they don't know because they're not in there. And I imagine for your husband as well, it's hard to explain.
Yes.
Because
there's no way.
Yeah, when you come home from work, that's the last thing you want to talk about.
Right.
So you bury it deep.
Yeah, well, they don't want to talk about it either because they want to protect the family from the horrors that they see. They don't want to come home. So there's this mentality that we don't talk about it when we come home, because we want to protect our families from. Communication is key. I used to say, you don't have to give me the gory details, but you can share with me
what's going on.
Yes. I don't need all the details, but I know you had a hard day and that, the children are the hardest for them. If there was a child involved, that's part of what the problem is. There's no communication. There is a second film that I did that's out now. It was just released, called Is There Something Going On at Home? And that one addresses how trauma that the officers and the first responders bring into their homes, how it affects the families. So in that documentary, it's a voice for the families. My daughter's in it. She speaks about how what my husband went through affected her. I speak a little bit about how it affected me, and we have a few other families that talk about it. So it's an ongoing, like you said.
Yeah, it's something that's never going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's available on Amazon and Tubi if anyone is interested to go watch that documentary.
Yes.
It's hard. Males, we have an ego. We don't like to admit when we're hurting. We are, like you had mentioned, your husband, they don't want to talk about that when they get home. They're trying to protect their family. That's, I guess, kind of born into us,
Yes.
that we are that way. So even outside of what these officers and first responders are having to deal with, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes they may get a break and then see the most horrible thing they've ever seen. Men in general
Yeah.
have a hard time speaking out about it. So then you put all of that with what these men in uniform have to see. And it's even, you have the little mixture of both, which makes it even harder to come out, and they boil up and boil up. How was it to, sit? How many tears fell sitting and listen to these guys tell their stories? Because my eyes welled up on quite a few occasions, and mainly on the gentleman that we've seen, I think, in the very beginning of the documentary, with the one hat
Luke,
on.
Luke Jensen.
Yes, his story, it really got to me. You can see the pain in the eyes. So how many tears fell? Can you count?
Oh, the thing is that what you see in the movie is a very small percentage of how many officers I interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed so many different officers, and I spoke to so many. And here's the thing. I can't even begin to tell you how many reached out to me behind the scenes, begging to tell their stories. They were begging to tell their stories. I was blown away by the fact that they felt so alone, and they all wanted to help each other. It was about helping, each other get through the tough times. I cried a lot, Otis, and what I want to tell you is that it did mentally affect me. I ended up having to make sure that I went into counseling because I started to have some nightmares. I started, hearing all these horrific stories started to take its toll on me. So I have suffered with depression my entire life. And yeah, sure, Deb, why don't we go and do a documentary? So I needed to reach out and get some help while I was doing the film because it was a lot to take in, a lot.
I bet. You have, as we all know, for anybody who's joined the past couple episodes, we know Lydia is the note taker of the podcast. I kind of, grab little things from what you're saying and kind of spit it off organically. Lydia is the note taker, so I know she's got some notes that she took on some of the gentleman that you featured in the documentary. If you want to, I thought I was segueing right in there.
So it's hard because coming from my background, even when I was dealing with my issues, you don't want to tell anybody because you don't want to seem weak.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, there's no mental health days for officers. You still got to go and put that uniform on, and you have to go out and still do your job as if you're not suffering.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me personally, especially being a female, like I worked in a male prison. So when I was struggling, my hardest thing was I have to hide this because not only do I have to prove myself as a woman working here, I have to prove myself because I need everyone to know that I'm able to help them when it goes down. And one of the quotes that you had put up in the documentary was, where is it? I had it saved.
So many notes.
It's not about what can go wrong. It's what will go wrong.
That's right.
And there is no question of if something bad will happen. It's only a question of what will happen and when it will happen.
Correct.
And that's a difficult thing. And if you're struggling emotionally and mentally, you need everyone to know that when that happens, you're ready to go and you're going to help them and you're going to make sure that everyone comes out of that situation the same way they went in.
Yes.
But some of the stories that, oh my God, one officer was, this is kind of like chronologically,
Yeah.
as so one of the first people he spoke about, he was doing a ride along, and he was like, oh, this is going to be boring. And I did a ride along back when I was in college, with just like the local PD. And I was like, yes, we're going to see action. And, for someone coming into it, it's exciting.
Right.
For the officers that have been doing it a long time, they want a quiet shift. And it was, like we didn't have anything crazy. We did have like one domestic violence call. But this officer talks about one of their first calls, they responded to a double homicide.
Yes. Yes.
So to imagine just showing up and there's just 2 bodies there.
Yep.
And now the next one is going to hurt the most because it deals with a child.
Yes.
The officer spoke about how he responded to a call of an 11-year-old girl that hung herself.
Yes.
In her garage.
Yes.
And he walked up to the scene and she's just lying on the ground.
I mean, I can't even. The stories are horrific. They are truly horrific. It is, you just said something that I know people are probably like going to cringe when they hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a reality. This is a reality. They see some very horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
And you wonder, how is any human being able to see such horrible things in a career? We're just not made to do that. No. There's no way that this is not going to impact your mental health. There's just no way.
Well, I know, I remember from my childhood, my mother was an officer. And I remember a story she told us that she had responded. It was a child abuse case, and the mother had put the child in a bath, and the water was so hot that it completely burned his legs. And she was, with him at the hospital, and you could see like the bubbles starting to form on the legs because the water was that hot.
Yeah.
So not only to see that as a person, but as a mother too, it's difficult. And I don't know if this officer was a father or not when he saw that girl, but it's difficult because you don't want to think about children that way.
No.
But the next officer talks about he responded to a train car collision.
Oh.
And if I remember correctly, it was late at night, and she was trying to get off the tracks. She was trying to get out the car when the train collided. And the car, this is just to show like how much impact. The car went 2 city blocks.
Yes.
And he walks up, and you just see this person lying there, and it's something that you don't know how it's going to be until you see it. It's not like the movies.
That's right.
It's real. It's right in front of you.
Right.
And the next officer, he talks about how someone had taken their life with a shotgun to the head.
Yep.
And when he walked in, he didn't see it at first, but he was walking on brain matter.
Yes. Yes. I've heard that a million times when I was interviewing. A million times I've heard how many times, they were walking, and stuff like that. Again, mind blowing.
Yep.
Mind blowing that it's like,
could you ever just imagine
No.
oh, I have brains in the treads of my shoes?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have it later on written, but I'll touch on it. It was a fire. It was a retired captain talking about how he had responded to a fire, and he still can smell it.
Yes.
Mhm.
And he said as he was walking, he was like, I know what it feels like to walk on blood. He's
Yes.
like, and I knew that's what was happening. He's like, and I knew it was my officer's blood.
Yes.
He's like,
Yeah.
and I could not look down because he's like, I had to get there. But he's like, I was slipping in my officer's blood.
Yes. 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 Wow. It's crazy that I made this film. I made it. I edited it. I did all of that, and to this day, those stories still get to me.
Yeah.
I
No
will
doubt.
never be okay. I'll never be comfortable with them.
Which
Yes.
goes to show
Yeah.
that if it's still affecting you just from interviewing, imagine how the people responding to these and seeing these incidents, how long they're going to struggle.
Mhm.
Because you mentioned that, your husband retired. Now, you would think it would get better.
No.
You're not seeing these things anymore. But it was quite the opposite. So
Yes, because everything he had pushed down started to creep up. And the stuff he totally forgot about started to creep up. Yeah, it was.
And how many years was he on the force?
22.
See, 22 years
Yeah.
of seeing, maybe not all the time, but
No.
thank God it's not all the time. But seeing it at all over a 22-year period, I'm sure more, as you said, hundreds of car crashes.
Yes.
He probably saw more than maybe your typical,
Yes.
cop, beat cop or whatever, because of the high rate of accidents and fatalities involved in accidents. I mean, hey, if you need a definition for complex PTSD, that's it right there. And I'm sure that's something we'll get into on future shows when we start getting into different diagnosis.
Yes.
But take it away. I just had to throw that in there.
No, 100%. Thank you for saying that. Again, it took me, and this is a clear example. Like I said, I have suffered with depression my entire life, but it took to see my husband suffering in order for me to get involved and do something, right? We don't do for ourselves. We don't take care of ourselves. And that's the problem. We are responsible for us. Nobody's going to fix us. Nobody is, we have to reach out for help. We have to say there's a problem here. We need to recognize these things. If your family members and your friends are saying, hey, what's the matter? You've changed, or, whatever. Pay attention to those things. Your life matters, man. Your mental health matters. And so I think, like, for me, it was really about, these are real stories. This is the thing. And officers are killing themselves by the incredible numbers. Firefighters, EMTs, dispatch, corrections are all dying. Their number one cause of death is suicide. Okay. And that is a fact. And it comes down to, we cannot wait for the departments to step in. We cannot wait. We need to take care of ourselves. And there's help. Just reach out, find that place. But please, I'm sorry. This is where I'm so passionate.
No.
Please know that
I would rather you call me at 3 o'clock in the morning with your issues than be one of the 6 people that
That's right.
carries your casket out.
Yes.
You know, that phrase will always stick with me.
Yep.
And, listening to these officers, you have to be tough about it. If it bothers us, we can't say anything. Even in the trailer, the officer said how if he had a broken leg, it would be different. But this is invisible.
That's correct.
You can't see it.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. One of the things I do want to say, and this is, I want you to know that when I started this process with the film, and as you mentioned, it's quite a few years back, things are slowly changing.
Which your documentary brought about change.
Yes. We actually I'm living in the state of Florida now, and we literally were able to get PTSD recognized as an on-the-job, line of duty injury. So literally, now an officer can get workers' comp for dealing with a mental health issue and not have to worry about getting back to work the next day. So again, things are slowly changing, but the bottom line is there is absolutely a way to get through it. We don't have to wait until the shit hits the fan.
One of the officers had said, you're the last one to know that you have a problem.
Yes.
So,
That's how it normally is with addiction.
Yes.
And addiction, although I think is right along with mental illness, because you don't see it. You don't know if the person next to you is addicted off of pills unless he's visibly showing it. But isn't that the same way with mental illness? You don't know if the person next to you is suffering from a mental illness, maybe, unless they're manic or they're acting, with odd behavior. It's kind of the same thing, but I don't know where I was going.
No. Where you're going is very good, because many people that are suffering with some kind of mental health issue will use drugs and alcohol to cover that up.
Yeah, I did.
Yes, you to cover up the trauma, will turn to drugs, will turn to alcohol to help numb the pain. So they go very much hand in hand, trauma, addiction, mental health. I just want to put that out there because
I had it in my notes.
Yes.
I was going to say, there's no way that's not in your notes. And see, because an unintentional segue. I'm pretty good at that. But it worked. Yeah.
It's great that, people like agencies are starting to see that these mental health issues are hurting their people. And 18% of officers suffer from PTSD, and a lot of them are using alcohol as probably the number one thing to mask the pain that they're dealing with, because they don't want to talk about it. They have an image that they know they have to maintain. And
the tough guys,
Yes. Well, I gotta just, I saw Chandra's on here. That's so sweet. A couple of my friends joined. Yay! Thank you, guys. That is so cool. The thing is that, what you said, and we mentioned it before. This is really important, guys. If we're talking about the possibility of 18% of our first responders are working the streets, undiagnosed, and
those are the ones that are diagnosed. Right. So now you have almost 80% that could not be diagnosed, and they don't even know that they're dealing with it because they're the last ones to know.
Yeah. And that's a problem, guys. That's a problem. Again, we just hope that people, get a chance to see these, stuff like, people that are working to raise awareness like you guys are, and understand that it's within themselves. It's within themselves to be able to try to find a way to get the help that they need, because that's a scary statistic to me. That's really scary to know that, that there are people out there armed, dealing with some issues that aren't being addressed. So it's kind of like a what is that called? A pressure cooker, right? And it's about to freaking burst. And that's and as an artist, I guess there's just so much I want to say. As a writer and a filmmaker, everything that I do somehow has to deal with mental health. And I'm working on several projects right now that are just, it's not like beating you down with, talking about mental health, but it's addressing some of the issues that women deal with. Domestic violence that ends up with PTSD or depression, or, I really feel like it's really important for art, for us to try to address it in a way that we're not only entertaining people, but they're educating people as well about the mental health issues out there. Isaac has, as a disabled veteran with diagnosed PTSD, multiple suicide attempts, and anxiety, I can attest to the last to no part. I wish I have gotten the meds and treatment 20 years ago.
Well, Isaac, we're glad you failed in them attempts. We're glad that you're here and joining us tonight. It is, as I mentioned, I think that's where I got off on the addiction thing, because with addiction, you're the last to know. And, I can also, even though I do not have any, former, law enforcement, I'm just, a regular guy, but also, have my issues with borderline personality disorder, complex PTSD. And I can tell you that there for a long time, I thought that was just who I was.
Yeah.
I had no idea something was actually going on up there. That wasn't right. The way I was acting, I thought, well, isn't that how everybody acts, And if you didn't act that way, maybe possessive as I was in my teen years, if you didn't act that way, you didn't, love me or like me, and I just thought that was how everybody acted, that the way you were acting was not normal. And so I was the last to know until, some self-harm came, and then I realized, hey, wait a minute, this isn't right,
So Blake just my beautiful, amazing. I want to just mention this. Blake is on here. Blake and I Blake also deals with mental health issues. We're working on a show together right now that deals with mental health stuff. So we're working on a pilot that helps address different diagnoses. Otis and Lydia. Blake,
if you need help with anything,
yes,
I'm here for you.
Well, Lydia, yeah, totally. There's a couple of readings we're gonna have, and Blake is so freaking hilarious. I can't even tell you. She's dealing with borderline personality disorder, and we met during some very difficult times in our lives, and doing what we can to help just let
people
others
struggling.
Yes, there is a ton of us struggling.
Thank you for watching, Blake, and everybody that's watching. Thank you. All the comments are great.
Yes.
Before I get into my statistics, you spoke about your husband. How did he feel after watching this, and how did he feel about you making it?
Yeah.
He was very, very supportive of me making the film, but he had that very old school mentality. I don't need any help. I can handle this, blah, 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 blah. And because of all of the interviews that I had, and he was able to see that he was not alone, that helped him reach out for help.
I'm glad. And how is he doing today?
He's doing a lot better. He had an addiction problem, Otis. So that, he had to deal with his addiction issues. We do talk about that in the documentary, the new one. Is there something going on at home? My husband's story is in that film. Our story is in that film, if you want to hear about that. He's doing much better today, but I will tell you, it has changed him completely. And that's okay. He's not the same person that he was when we met, and that's okay. We're living life differently today, and every day, something.
One day at a time.
Yes, yeah. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie to you. It is not easy, but he's doing so much better, and we are moving forward, and I'm very proud of him.
That's awesome. And yeah, with a lot of mental illness comes, some comorbid, dual diagnosis,
Yes.
And some being, addiction. I had to take care of my alcohol because that was my poison. I had to take care of my alcohol, and I have a little over a year sober. And then, thank you. And then, with that came meds, which I was really against. I don't know if that was a macho thing, but
no, I looked at it too as being against meds, because I'm like, why do I need a pill to make me happy?
Exactly. That was right out of my book. Yep.
Well, I was reluctant to take meds too, but meds saved my freaking life, guys. Literally, I kid you not when I tell you, I was suicidal.
Thank you, Billy.
Suicide attempt, and
we're glad you're still here.
Yes, the meds saved my life. I'm 100% believer in do what you need to do. Try whatever you need to try. Find what works for you. I don't want to be on meds my whole life. If I have to, I have to. But counseling, meds are not a cure-all.
No.
They're a tool.
They're
a tool to put in your toolbox.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you got to interview all these families, and then you told your story.
Yes.
What do you feel was the biggest issue within these families of dealing with these issues?
Oh gosh. I got to tell you, communication is the biggest. Okay. Communication. You're never going to understand. You're not a police officer. You're not a correction officer. You're not a firefighter. You're never going to understand. You're not a veteran. You're never going to understand. You haven't been there. How could you understand? I don't need to freaking understand. I just need to know that you're struggling. I want to be there for you. And that's it right there. It's talking to one another. It's just letting your partner in, because what they do is they isolate. They push the family away. They stop going to family functions. They start drinking, all this stuff, or having an affair. There's so many things that can happen. And it's communication. It's how do I learn to trust my husband, my wife, talk to my kids so they're not afraid of me. It's communication. It's being able to be real and saying, I'm struggling. It is braver. It takes more courage to say that you need help.
Yep.
It takes a lot of courage to do that. So be courageous.
Yeah, very wise words, because even my personal experience, my typical line was, I feel like a burden. I don't want to be a burden on my family. I used that so many times, which, at times I did, I talk a lot, to my wife, but there were a lot of times that, maybe I was feeling something, maybe, I just woke up in a bad mood, is what I would tell my wife, when I knew deep down there was something going on, but I didn't want to talk about it. I'm tired of being a burden. I've burdened you guys long enough with my problems. And then that's when things start stacking up, like you were talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's a dangerous cycle to get into. You don't let your cup overflow. Pour some out on somebody else. There's always
Yeah.
going to be somebody who's
Yes.
going to sit down and listen to you.
Yeah. It's rough, guys. It's not easy.
No, it's
No,
not.
it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Some things I was able to find was, so this is my friend Rich. He actually was a CEO for
Wow.
25 plus years. So
Thank you for
you
your
know,
service, Rich.
he's retired now.
Thank you, Rich.
So
Uh-huh.
Rich, I'm really glad that you tuned in for this episode because, like me and him can understand each
Yeah.
other. Like we've run into fights where an inmate has been slashed. And I remember this was actually my first 2 weeks of training on the job. I was at a max, and on the radio you just hear response level 1. And so what you do is I was on the 3rd tier. Everybody had to go down to the 1st tier, and all you see down the gallery is just blood.
Oh my goodness.
And you don't know what happened. And the inmate that got hurt, they had him just sitting in the shower and what had happened was another inmate got mad because he didn't give him hot water. So he cut him multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
And these guys are on the edge in that type of environment, so it doesn't take a lot to a lock in a sock or a shank or something.
Yeah.
But that is something that I will never forget.
Yep.
That was 11 years ago.
Yep.
I actually started the academy 11 years ago today.
Wow. Look at that, Liddy. Wow.
But so in some of the research I was able to do, in 2022 alone, 50,000 Americans unalived themselves.
Yep.
In 1 year.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, as far as, law enforcement, from 2016 to 2022, there were 1,287 officers that committed suicide.
Wow.
That we know of, that were reported.
That's correct.
Because some are not reported as
Right.
that.
Also, Lydia, the ones that are retired and end up, that number we know to be much larger, but nobody's keeping an eye on the retirees.
Yep.
So
it actually said that a majority of officers were actively serving at the time of their suicide, but 17% were retired.
yes.
So they did their whole entire career. And you think, oh, I'm retired. I'm going to go sit on the beach. I'm going to do everything that I wanted to do while I was working. But you can't now.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So there was in 2019 234 suicides alone just in that year of law enforcement. 2020 took a dip to 184.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasoning they said for that is they think that it's attributed to COVID and it gave officers a renewed sense of purpose.
Right.
And also, when COVID were locked down, we're not out doing all these things.
Yeah,
so,
true.
So you're not responding to some of the calls that you used to.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep.
But then again, criminals don't give a shit about COVID.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is true. When you need your drugs, you need your drugs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So 51% of suicides were by local police.
Yeah.
While 20% were sheriffs and 13% were corrections officers.
Yep.
And I know these numbers are kind of all over the place.
No, I'm telling you, these numbers are low. They're low because it's only reported. Okay, I'm just going to give you an example. a police officer that dies in his car, crashes into something.
Because he just
marked
shot
as an
himself.
accident. No, but it's marked as died in a car accident when in fact that officer did that on purpose, right? So that's not ruled suicide. And do you know how many actual suicides are ruled as accidentally?
Dental. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, because look at it, like if you're religious in the
Yeah.
Catholic religion, it's a sin
Yeah.
to commit suicide.
How about
So
this one, Lydia? How about this one? If you commit suicide, your family doesn't get any of your pension.
yep. So what do? It's labeled as something else. So the numbers we have are completely skewed. I would say they're probably double in actuality. You know,
So I
would
have a
you think
story.
would you think that some of the low numbers are attributed to department shame, which is why they label it?
Oh, yes. There's all kinds
Why
of
they
things.
label it a car accident when actually, like you said, Lydia, he meant to do that.
Yeah.
But no, his car went out of control, and no, he went out of control.
There's a lot of reasons, for that. But I have a story. I'll make it really quick. He was a captain, and he was suffering with depression, and he literally was getting help. But what I want to make clear is that sometimes you wait so long. You wait so long to reach out for help. And, unfortunately, it's at that point they reached a point of no return for them. Yeah. So he was getting some help. But he decided to end his life. And what he did was he wanted to make it look like
an
he was shot to death, right? That he was killed. So what he did was he went to this remote area and actually, had the gun like coming at him so that it would look like a perpetrator killed him. Mm-hmm. Because he knew that if he was ruled a suicide, they would receive no money. But what he didn't know was that there was an actual camera. Oh. And the whole thing was caught on tape. So they saw where he was slashing himself to make it look like he was in a fight. He cut himself up. You could see it all on camera. And he ended up shooting himself. And the camera caught it all. So it was obviously ruled a suicide.
That's
isn't that sad?
Yeah.
It is.
It's sad. It's just.
I think. No, I'm sorry.
No, it's terrible. It's just heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
I was going to say also, I think, some of these numbers are skewed because of the stigma of suicide, which, obviously that's why we're doing this podcast is we're trying to break that stigma. Like it's not an issue, like, but, some people look at, oh, he killed himself. Like, I don't want to go near that family. I don't want to know about it. Like there is still that stigma.
Well, people don't know first of all, they don't know what to say.
Yes.
Second of all, don't ever say to me, don't you ever say to me, that person was so selfish for doing that. Don't you ever say that to me. That is so far from the pain is so bad that is their only way
to end their pain.
And to think that somebody would want to, to leave, it's just horrifying to, leave a wife and children or a husband and children behind, because what you said, Otis, is I don't want to be a burden. Yeah. That's a huge one. My depression is making that family, putting pressure on the family. I don't want to be a burden. I feel weak. I don't feel strong enough. So there's all that stigma that's attached to this is part of the reasons why people are ending their own lives. And man, it's just really sad. It's just really, really sad.
whenever I think about it, and I'm like, okay, well, if I did do it this way,
Yeah.
you know, if I used a gun, I'm like, that's going to be a lot for my family to clean up.
Oh my
And
God.
I don't want to do that to them.
Oh,
You know, like these are the thoughts that go through my mind.
Yeah.
yeah. It's terrible. Oh
and-
my God. But thank you for saying that. Thank you for being honest. Thank you because that's the problem. Oh my
Yeah.
God. How did she say that? These are real things.
Yep.
These are real feelings, and as I've mentioned, open discussion and education are two very big things I believe that need to happen to chip away at this stigma. We need to be educated. Education will help families, as we mentioned earlier. The families suffer, you know, almost as bad, I guess, almost equal to what the person suffering is going through. You're putting them through, you know, a lot of anguish, and you know, kids and wives, spouses can walk away with PTSD, you know, from a relationship.
Yes.
So it's very important to, you know, bring stuff like this to the forefront. As horrible as it is to hear, you know, somebody you care about, you know, say these things, that's painful. But you got to understand how painful it was for them to have it in their own head. And that's very important.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard from my partner that he was afraid when he came home that
I'm so sorry, Lydia. I love you.
No, you know what? Dad, he didn't think I was going to be here anymore.
Yes. I've been there. I know.
And I don't know what to say to that because, well, I do. I tell him, I'm like, I won't, because I don't ever want my kids to find me.
That's right. That's right. And I'll tell you, my kids were my reason. And, you know, again, you know, when you are so immersed in this incredible amount of pain that the thought of your kids, you know, can't even stop you. I can't even imagine. I have been there. I will never hurt my children that way, ever, ever, ever. You know, and let me tell you, there's been a ton of times it just would be a whole lot easier to just not be here. You know, it's just, I understand it. Lydia, we love you, man. And thank you for being so raw and honest. I know how horrible that is.
And we were just talking about courage, and that's courage right there. I mean,
it's, you know, it's like, you know, Deb, you know, like the industry we're in, and Otis, you're getting into it. You know, I just became very vulnerable. Like I exposed myself and the issues I have. So now in my mind, I'm like, nobody's going to want to work with me.
I'm sorry.
But you know,
right.
like nobody's going to want that girl on set.
Well, Lydia, I've been there. Okay. I have been there. I speak openly about my mental health issues. I have been there. And I will tell you why would you want to work with anyone who felt that way? So you weeding out those people, you're doing yourself a favor. You don't want to work with people that have that infantile, that uneducated mentality. You don't want to work with
stigma lovers. They're the ones holding on to the stigma and not wanting to work with, not realizing, hey, you know, she could be, you know, an amazing actress. You know, why does your mental health even have to be a part of any? We're talking about acting ability, but yeah, that's horrible. I can understand how those thoughts could come in. Yeah.
I just have to say, Blake and I and Sherry, we're the three writers on this project we're working on. And we said that anyone that comes to work on the project, one of these criteria is that you have to have a mental health issue. Because if you don't understand this, you can't be a part of this project.
Well, it's funny
Well, if
because
there's something I can do, I'll help because I do.
whenever I've had to cry in a scene, you know, they come up to you and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm like, one of the great side effects of depression is you can cry on cue.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I can do it too. But yeah, I wouldn't want to work with anyone that ever felt that way.
Thank you, Blake.
Lydia, we want you on set, Blake says.
Thank you, Blake.
Ortiz too. You too. I'm not kidding when I say that.
I do try to make set as fun as possible.
You do.
I do too. I do
She's
too.
amazing. You're funny. You're full of life. You made me feel
for as
so
much
welcome.
darkness as I have, I try to be a light.
You are a light.
What is it that Robin Williams said that the people that are hurting the most,
yeah,
try to make people laugh the most because they don't want them to feel the way they feel.
100%. 100%.
And it's true. I had some more statistics, but it just, it doesn't feel it's never gonna show you.
It's okay.
I could throw numbers at people all day.
No,
but
this is real. I mean, the numbers are there, and
but it's watching your documentary and seeing the stories unfold, spoken from the people that live them. That is what is going to help make change.
Yes.
And
projects like you're working on with Blake, we need there's an indie film little company called Cosmic Wave Films, and they have some mental health undertones to their films, and I'm a huge supporter of them.
Oh, you can check them out.
Yeah, they actually did a short called Panic Attack Blood Pub. And you see they were actually in the Indie Horror Junkie Film Festival last year, or actually this February. But they bring up anxiety, which one of the founders there, Angela, deals with. So they took their pain and put it towards a purpose, and that's why this is such a passion project for me with this podcast, because I love to tell my story. It doesn't bother me really anymore, whereas it used to. Now it doesn't. Now I feel like maybe my story can maybe help somebody else, just like your documentary can open someone's eyes. Lydia, her story, her opening up, having the courage to just, almost break down. That
I
took
probably
a lot
will after we end.
Okay, all right. Well, that was just the pregame show.
I'm delaying. I'm acting right now.
Oh, okay.
See how good? Would have never even known. Never would have known.
Right. No, that's great. That's awesome. Oscar.
But we have, we're going over our normal hour, which thank you, Deb, so much for being here and coming on and for making this amazing documentary. There was one quote that I did find that I feel needs to be shared. Yes. It was by a senior research associate. His name is Dan Lawrence, and he wrote that the absence of a systematic, national, and comprehensive data collection effort of public safety deaths by suicide has prevented the field from better understanding the extent of the problem.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought that was just really important to share.
It's truth. It is 100% truth.
Because even, Otis said that departments, and I think you might have mentioned it, they do like yearly checks.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And not all of them do. Not all of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
before I was medically terminated for my injury, I had been in for 7 years. I will tell you, in that 7 years, not once
That's right.
did we ever talk.
Right.
We were basically told, yeah, if you have an issue, go to EAP.
And the last thing you want to do is go to EAP, honey.
Right? Because it's going to be all over and everybody's going to know everything.
That's correct. So EAP, just so you know, Otis, is early. What's the acronym for? Anyway, it's.
They're supposed to be there to help you if you're struggling with it. If you're struggling with drinking or stuff like that, you go to them and you tell them. So now the department knows that you have this problem.
That's the last. No, I'll tell you right now. I did trainings for NYPD. I've done trainings for many big departments, and none of the officers trust their EAP programs.
Right.
And it's not that they're not there to help you, but the bottom line is, once the job knows that you have a problem, there's a very good chance that they're going to take your badge and your gun.
They will find any reason to get rid of you.
Right. So what I want to say before we end is, to anyone that's out there that may be struggling, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook page called Heroes and Families United. Heroes and Families United. I also am on Instagram. Is there something going on at home? Maybe we can put these things up there. If there's anyone out there that is a first responder or a family member who may be struggling and is looking for help, we are here. I can guide you in the right direction. I don't want, everything's confidential. Nobody will know anything. So if you need to reach out, I'll make sure they have all the links to the films, to how we can get help if you need help. Thank you for everyone out there who is doing what they can to help raise awareness. I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.
No, we thank you. So make sure you go and watch Code 9, Officer Needs Assistance. And then after you check that out on Amazon, go over to Tubi and check out, is there something going on at home? Which I will make sure I get to that as well. And we like to end every episode with, did we break any stigmas for you today? Like, is anybody looking at this situation differently? And that's what we hope we're doing. We were talking about what we were going to do for our next episode. And I think, Otis, instead of what we were talking about, I think we should go into veterans and the stigma with veterans. I think that should be our next topic. So if anybody you want to share a story or anything, please reach out to either of us. Join the Facebook group. You can message it. We'll answer you. But I think that discussing veterans on the next episode would be good.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Then, as we've had it scrolling, but if you need help, you can call or text 24/7 988 if you need help. So do that.
And I can attest, a year ago, I ended up putting myself into the hospital, and that was when I quit drinking. And that whole process kind of started before I had a rough going with a therapist, but I got a hold of that therapist through that 988. So you can text if you don't want to call. And they'll point you in the right direction, just knowing where you're located at, and they'll tell you where to go, some options for some therapists in your area. And so definitely use that.
Yes.
It's there for a reason.
And if anybody, wants to catch anything that they've missed, you will be able to see this episode on my YouTube channel, Otis's YouTube channel, and the Break the Stigma, Dread the Stigma podcast YouTube channel. We'll be posting links. So anybody that has missed this, but again, thank you, Deb, and thank you, Otis, and thank you everyone that tuned in tonight. Thank you for all the comments.
It was a great turnout.
It was this. This is the most interaction we've had. This is our 4th episode.
Third.
So minus our introductory.
Minus our little pilot.
So if you enjoyed tonight's episode, go back and check out our other episodes. And have a good night.
Well, I'm going to share your podcast. Thank you for what you're doing. I thank you.
Thank you,
Otis and Lydia. You're a star. You're a rock star. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.